Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such an amazing place to live, work, and play. Hey, listen, we're airing this show on Monday. We're recording it on Wednesday. This is when the mayor, FoFo Gilich, and I could get together. Before we go to the mayor, though, I want to mention something to you real quickly. We've all watched with obviously a lot of care and prayer on the Damar Hamlin situation from the NFL game on last Monday night. And as of the taping of this show, as of just a few minutes ago, actually, he had continued to show progress. Let's hope that happens and that he recovers fully and can get on with his life. I think one important thing has come from the national conversation that is taking place is that there is a lot of focus on CPR right now, the need to know CPR. In fact, the way I've always said it, I'm a former paramedic, incidentally. Most of my listeners know that. I went to the University of Alabama in Birmingham and became a paramedic, and then I was in pre-med. I was going to be an emergency room physician, and decided to change my career, and the rest is kind of history. But I had some incredible instructors at the paramedic school at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. And from that point forward, I always believed strongly that the more bystanders who know CPR, the better. I won't go into it now, but most of you are fully aware that I had to do mouth-to-mouth to my own granddaughter about a year ago. And she's doing great today. But to know CPR in that moment, I can't explain to you how important that was. But there is a national conversation happening about CPR now. When you look at this what is suspected around Damar Hamlin's injury, that he got hit in the chest at a very vulnerable point. At least this is suspected now. A very vulnerable point in his heartbeat, and an area called the T-wave, which is when there is a moment after the ventricles of your heart, the lower chambers of your heart have beat. That is going through what is called repolarization. Essentially what that means is your heart is preparing to beat again. There's a very, very vulnerable moment in that T-wave that if you get hit in that moment, it can send the heart into what is called ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation. I know a lot about it, incidentally, because my electrocardiography teacher at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, her son was killed by a baseball to the chest. And it made her go on a life's mission to teach people about the importance of CPR and importance of paramedics, learning about electrocardiography and about the heart and how CPR can really save people's lives. And I won't say anything more about it, but I will just say this, that if you haven't learned CPR, the American Heart Association has some great online courses. You can go to cpr.heart.org. That's cpr.heart.org. You can go to redcross.org. There are CPR classes online. In fact, you'll see lots and lots of choices. And because there's a national conversation happening about this now, you will find even more information about that than is typically there. Think about kids in sport. This particular thing, if this is what happened to Damar Hamlin, it's incredibly rare. You have to hit in just millisecond moment, but it potentially happened to him, and it could happen to others. So the more bystanders who know this, the better. Just as important to know about CPR. Someone near you has a heart attack. I'll tell you one other little side effect of this is that you've seen a lot of praying online. You've seen a lot of focus on religion. You may have even seen ESPN's Dan Orlovsky, who did an on-air prayer. That's good to see that. Now, you also see some of the cesspool of social media reacting to that, but overwhelmingly, the reaction has been very positive. I think this is really important to America that we think about these things. CPR and prayer, what better things can we focus on as we enter into the new year? So now let's shift gears and move over to my friend, the mayor of the city of Biloxi, Mayor FoFo Gilich. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm doing great. And along those lines, let me follow up and just my little technical brain and understanding that repolarization is a 40 millisecond window, right? I mean,
yes.
From a technical standpoint, it always amazes me how the whole body works on, the ability to move information or move, sensors around. And just thinking, like I said, my background, but 40 milliseconds is a pretty long time for that vulnerability. I think it relates to me back when I was a kid in technology and working at the Space Center, Johnson Space Center, and there was a free combination computer system for primary backup and backup to the backup. That was, if you lost data, that you need to switch between the machines in 20 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So, 20 milliseconds, that's 20 millionths of a second. So it kind of caught me in, we were all watching the game, and when the emergency room physician said, you got to just a point in time, you got 60 beats per minute, you got 40 milliseconds. So when it turns over. So it really is amazing that they from the electrocardiology situation, it just happened to hit at that point in time. And talking about baseballs and so it really is amazing. Yes. I think it only, the realization of of how things are is going to add to the whole understanding. And I was talking about CPR. Every one of our fire departments, are trained and are they're going to be because every week there's a calls to. For my 7,000 hotel rooms, that's all important to make sure that you get there fastest with the mostest.
Yeah, most experts, FoFo, just based on what I read, said that it could be as specific as 20 milliseconds. Just if you were given that example, that it could be in a time frame of 20 milliseconds. But for people who have seen like an EKG, you don't know what you're looking at, but what you see when you look at it, there's a little hump. That little hump is the top part of your heart that's actually contracting. And then you have this little spike. And the spike is called the QRS complex. And that's when the ventricles are actually pumping the blood to the rest of your body. And then after that, there's another like slightly longer and higher hump. That's called the T wave. And at the peak of the T wave, and then back it up just a tad, about 20 milliseconds. That's that really critical moment. And as FoFo just pointed out, because he's a mathematician, literally, that's a really, really, really very small amount of time. And but it's amazing that if you think about the number of hits that football players take on the field, from elementary school all the way up to the pros. It's amazing we don't hear more about this, but we're beginning to read more about it. Actually, that some players in high school and college have been hit in this very similar way, and what we learned, at least this is the situation as of today. What we've learned is that because there were incredibly gifted medical personnel nearby, and they could get CPR started immediately. They could get the defibrillator going. That's the way the defibrillator, the shocking of the heart is the way you reverse a ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation, and that is what happened in his case. So I'm praying that he is able to come back. He had hoped to raise about, I think, $2,500 for his toy fund, and last I checked, it was like $6 million. By the time this airs, it will probably be much greater than that. But the contributions that young man will make to the power of prayer, to the need for CPR, to bringing focus to kids who are less fortunate, and the toy program that he had. I mean, there's a lot of divine intervention in this, and let's pray that he has a big life ahead. Hey, one last thing: the importance of dialing 911 as fast as possible. Putting your phone on speakerphone so that the very well trained person on the other end of that line answering the 911 operator can help sort of guide you and the family and whoever's around while you await the first responders to get to your house. We experienced all that when I had to do CPR on my granddaughter. And gosh, it's all so important. But one of the things I think learning CPR does, FoFo, is it prepares you for what you would experience. It helps you practice and think about it so that in that really tense moment when someone needs your help, that you can have your wits about you and do what is necessary. Yeah. And boy, we can't emphasize that enough. I know that your first responders are just thrilled, certainly the case in our case, when they get to the scene, then they see that there's someone who's trained there who could sort of help the situation along so that they didn't have to deal with someone who was deceased by the time they got there. It's just, it's good for them that we know CPR, isn't it?
Yeah, it is so important. You never know, and it's better to be at least engaging in at least the plan when it kicks in, and you never know exactly how it's going to roll out, but you know what you're supposed to be doing. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Hey, listen, we talked a little bit about the Croatian flag before we started. Biloxi's got this rich Croatian history that you and I spent a whole show talking about, but we had the benefit, the last World Cup, Ann and I and my son Justin were actually in Dubrovnik, old Dubrovnik. We had befriended a pub owner there and watched the game in his pub overlooking old Dubrovnik while Croatia played in the finals. They didn't get in the finals this time. They got in the semifinals, but it's sure good to see that little country of that such a small population making it to the world stage again, isn't it?
Oh, it was great. It was great. Like you said, the small country and the passion for football and as well as water polo. So they're amazing on how they get where they go. I think Modric and a couple other ones were very inspirational to see, because we had just finished. We weren't there for the finals, but we were there during the week, and it was like Super Bowl every time they played. And I think that was at the time, And
it was so fun. Hey, listen, when we come back, I'm curious about what the holidays have been like for the mayor, and then we'll shift gears and talk about some exciting projects the city is working on. There's always a lot going on in the city, but we'll cover all the bases before we get done today. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend, the mayor of the city of Biloxi, FoFo Gilich. And what I'm curious about FoFo is we'll be getting to some of the really important projects that are happening in the city here shortly. But what's the Christmas season look like for your family?
Well, like I say, over the last 5 or 6 years, family gets bigger and bigger, and it gets spread out. And Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, of course, Mass and some of the religious components are always good. Of course, Santa Claus being at different, now instead of being in one spot, it's in about 5 or 6 spots. And so it's kind of hard to stretch yourself. It's only 24 hours in the day. But I did have a pretty quiet, but a great Christmas, and we look forward to it every year. And I did of course, my wife is the inspiration on a couple of decorations, which I just put up. So it's always a great time. Once a year, that's enough. Not like the Olympics. It should be every year, I guess. But I always be every 4 years.
Well, one thing is, Ann and Lisa and Miss Annette, there's a lot of traditions when you combine that French side of the family with the Croatian side of the family, the food and desserts, and whoo, man, it's good while it's happening, but once it's behind you, you're thankful that it is, because once you get on the scale, you realize you got a little bit of work to do.
Almost like Lent, you got to give something up, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you think the holidays are over, but as you pointed out, with Lent coming up and Mardi Gras, we just changed. It's just another season changing, isn't it?
Wrap up. That's right.
So FoFo, there's a lot. I went to the website in preparation for the conversation today, and man, there's so much going on in the city. I went back and looked like ribbon cuttings and promotional ceremonies and all of that have happened in November and December since the last time we talked, and what's coming up in January. The Tullis replica and luxury hotel that's planned for East Biloxi. Man, I don't even know where to start. So, what's on your mind these days?
Well, we had a breakfast with the mayor and kind of revisit, which I'm kind of revisiting in my mind, because what we started in 2015 and 16, and the ability to turn Howard Avenue back to life, and there's some opportunities there with people living and playing and having a good time downtown Biloxi and repopulating that as projects here. But of course, Keesler, the Division Street gate is the main thing. I think they're finishing up the striping right now and all the lights, and there's a couple more, enhance that gateway, which is going to be, pretty cool by the time that, all the flowers and things are planted. So that's a big thing. That's a $37 million project that's all but done. to a boardwalk right there on Back Bay in between.
Hey, before we go to boardwalk, let's stick with Keesler for just a second.
Yeah.
You know, when you come off that I-110 ramp and look to the right and look down that boulevard, my goodness, man, it's just like we're really seeing sort of the grandeur of this new entrance. But it was important to have that entrance moved, wasn't it?
It is. It is great. I mean, look, it's it's a top-notch Air Force base. We feel it's the best. It's got the best of a lot of things. And again, there's a big cybersecurity project that's going to be going right around where White Avenue was, and so that's all coming together. But you mentioned this, and I'm just going to take a minute or so. But when you come off the I-110 exit and you're looking right to the west, and you'll see a white water tower, and it's just ready for a billboard, so to speak, Keesler. So it's a little project. This is FoFo trying to get that. That means, when you see it, it's almost like a spaceship right at the end. So you're heading towards the spaceship. That's my next little kick in to get that decorated. Not decorated, but hey, you're going to Keesler. This is your gateway into Keesler. So that's another little aside that I'm working on. Everything's a few $1,000s or tens of $1,000s, but we're going to make that happen. And, it's just something that's, right now, General Edmondson, she's the commander of 2nd Air Force. She was the 81st commander and a colonel at the time when we all got together. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what MILCON was, but $37 million later, here it is. And she's the commander of about 8 commands that she actually is based at Keesler. But the 2nd Air Force commander is just so much a friend and just a special person. You'll be seeing more stars in their future for sure.
It was a massive undertaking. I mean, just it took a partnership at all levels of government. You had to have incredible support from Keesler and the Air Force. But a massive undertaking, bringing all those parties together, getting the funding, and then commencing on the project itself. This multi-month project that it's finally coming to an end. But man, and you did it while you were rebuilding the infrastructure under the streets of the city simultaneously. I mean, that's just incredible.
It was. You just look back on, man, how did that come to fruition? So, it's part of the deal. And now that you can look back on it, now you just look at what's happening in the future. I'm looking 10 years down the road on what needs to be done, because that was a 5-year deal. Here we are, 5 years. 5 year passes fast. And, we did some pretty cool things. We got some very cool things on the radar, and some things that have been on the radar are kind of lighting up again. So we're real excited about, the boardwalks and the ability to keep the sand on the beach. I think, we've just bid out from Oak Street to the small craft harbor, about 25,000 tons of heavier sand to keep that sand from blowing on the beach. Working with the counties, working with the state. The state was critical in our part of the $18 million or so for the outside Keesler. You got to work hand in hand on them, with them, and the governor. He was tremendous in the last years of the project. That couldn't do it without him. It really took a village. From D.C. all the way through Jackson through the Air Force. So we're cool with where we are. We want to make it even better.
Well, on the boardwalk, I'm a huge fan. I've ridden my bike down there for years, actually. And now that it's all starting to all connect together, the opportunity to take that drive and go all the way to Ocean Springs, in one fell swoop. I love that. My son, Justin, was in town from New York City during the holidays, and Ann and I took him to the reef, and he brought his girlfriend down, and who was terrific, I might add. And he hadn't seen the boardwalk because when he's home for little short periods of time. And he and his girlfriend went and stood on the boardwalk right there at the reef and were just blown away by it. I mean, looking out over the beach, Chuck Loftus and his team does such a great job with the beach. And you see this beautiful boardwalk and the lighting, the way that lighting is done. And to think that your vision is to take that all the way around to Back Bay, it's incredible how that's coming together.
Yeah, like you said, it just makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, it's not always easy to do. But when you look at the long play, like I said, the vision, you want to be able to enjoy that waterside, especially that part of the beach and the way that boardwalk is constructed. It is something very, very extraordinary. And as you and I talked about, I think the design and engineering of it is so far, it stood the test of at least a couple of
storm surge scenarios,
right.
and without missing a board. It's really, hopefully that stays that way. But I think we're off to a good start there, don't you?
I do, and again, we're looking at it's going to prove itself as you roll down. We want it from that opportunity from DeVries Road all the way. If you want to go down the bay, it's 55 miles of track. If you wanted to, take it all the way up to your, towards the bay. But hey, it's just a matter of time and money and emphasis and dedication to get it done. But we certainly feel it's the right thing to do.
So I mentioned the Tullis site and what's planned for there, but that is a significant development for the city, isn't it?
It is, and it kind of makes sense. A few years ago, I think it's 2018, we did a little bit about what's needed, what's the opportunity on the bay, on the peninsula on the point, from East Biloxi, from Oak Street this way, and for a convention, extension of it, convention and hotel rooms and it's really amazing when you look at what it takes to put a hotel room. I think 200,000 a key is not unheard of, and that's a bunch of millions of dollars. And they're ready. They came in with they see some things, and we got people with projects similar to that going through the processes. But the numbers are there. I think we've had another significant year with regard to gaming and visitation. So we're pleased in the midst of all of this, things that are happening. We're okay. Again, we just knock on wood and keep our prayers going. We're just going to keep plugging away. My goal is 10 years out, figuring out what needs to be in place to roll through. Get enough momentum where the course is set, and it wouldn't make sense to get off course.
Well, thinking about that particular site, we all know that it's basically sat idle since Hurricane Katrina. It's that space between the Ori Museum and, say, Harrah's on Highway 90 right there. People will know where that is. Some of the most beautiful oak trees in the city are on that site. And what's extraordinary about this $140 million development is they plan to do it and save the trees. It's a really incredible. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the other side. But we're meeting with having a terrific conversation with the mayor of the city of Biloxi, Mayor FoFo Gilich. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We're visiting with my friend, the mayor of the city of Biloxi, FoFo Gilich. And when we went to break, I was mentioning that the developers who have proposed a project, 200-room hotel. It's with scenic gardens. They're going to actually have a full-size replica of the historic manor that was there prior to Hurricane Katrina. And they're going to save the trees. It's going to be 11 stories with penthouses and lots of important thinking around sort of the architectural design there. It even mentions the Buena Vista, I think, in the Tivoli, in the midst of all that. But a lot of thought has gone into that. And to think that they can do it on that site and save all those grand oak trees, that's got to be music to your ears.
It's all of them, too. They have not lost one protected tree. And if you had a couple of significant trees in the middle of the parking pool area, it's been right through it. So it is way cool, not pretty cool. And again, they have done their business and their research. So they're moving forward, and we're thankful for that. I think we're doing some appraisals to close actually the deal and go forward. They know, time is money, and that they want to be in business as fast as they can. And I'm sure it's a 12 to 18 month construction project, but it does. When you mentioned the Buena Vista and the deck, I don't know if you remember the old Buena Vista, and there was a facility on top that looked like a cruise ship, and I think they've incorporated that little look and view. So when you get to that top deck and you can see, most of North Island, from the top there. No, it's very cool, very exciting, and Frank Ginzer, I think, from the conceptual standpoint, hit all the notes, and it was a perfect opportunity to put his thoughts and to work, and so we're close excited about that.
Yeah, Frank was heavily involved with Frank Gehry on the design of the Orr O'Keefe Museum. The house that we used to live in next door, he actually designed that for us. And one of our goals actually was to do the footings of the house around an absolutely grand old oak tree. And he helped us create a design for that house that saved the oak tree.
Mm-hmm.
And, Frank's very talented and obviously understands sort of the historical perspective of the city. So I think he's a great partner for them to have on that journey. But people can actually read more about it if you go to the current the Biloxi website at biloxi.org or biloxi.mississippi.us. But just go to look up Biloxi website. And you'll see if you go down, let me get back to my notes here, and I'll tell you what the heading says. There's actually a list of things there. And one of the items, you'll see it listed, is this specific project. And you can click on that, and it will bring you to, you can see a rendering of the project. You can see the meeting where they presented, and if you can get everything you want to see right there in that one little spot. I think, by the way, I've said this many times before, but Cecilia does a really good job of communicating for the city, doesn't she?
She's great. She's been here significant, and she's paid her dues in this arena, and so we're proud to have her in leading that information, that passion about Biloxi from a media standpoint. We're very, very blessed that way. And
Mayor, we touched on infrastructure a little bit when we mentioned the new gate for Keesler, but where are we in terms of total completion of that project?
Well, again, from the west to the east is taking some things about 20 feet off the right of way. So we started at the mall with regard to the connections, water, sewer. Some of it is subsurface, which would be jack and bore. So, but some of it you have to tear up to lay the sleeve, so all into the water, sewer, and whatever the utilities will be subsurface, and not try to disrupt. We had a little, I guess, at the boulevard at Highway 90. That'll be structurally within 50 to 100 feet from the actual right of way, or on the right of way from the Highway 90. Won't be as disruptive, but that's a $30 or $40 million worth of remaining project to get that done. So that's going to tie from the Bees Road all the way to West Biloxi, and then from along the line all the way to where it needs to get into the West Biloxi and Keegan's Bayou plants. And so that's cool. Then we have some in central location wherever it went underwater, which the last phase will be the central part of Biloxi from Holly Street towards downtown. And that will be the actual last phase. That's probably $90 million, and probably a year from bidding that particular project. So that's the last, and not nearly as disruptive as when we first came on board with 55 miles of street torn up and all at one time. So we learned some things in how we bid things. We went from St. Michael's to from Point Cadet to this way and doing okay. We ran across some creosote. I don't know if we talked about it down on Howard Avenue, and had to remove 2,500 cubic yards of contaminated creosote, contaminated soil, and we had to go to the hazardous waste dump with that. But you run across these things. This is an old town.
Oyster shells.
Oyster shells. There was an oyster shell presentation from the conservative. They're going to preserve the oyster shells from restaurants. Everybody on the half shell. So there's a plan and an organization that will be recycling some of those. And he made a pitch last night at the council meeting. So it's amazing how oyster. I reminded him. I said, if you go on the point, you can see a fig tree. You can see oyster shells around the base, because that was part of the health of a fig tree. See how many oyster shells that would keep it growing. I'm not sure what chemical was added, but oyster shells are big, for Biloxi.
Hey, man, I knew well Mr. Pete had those at the house there on Cadet. It's interesting when you look up why is Biloxi famous. If you just go to Google and say, why is Biloxi famous? What pops up is this: known for its seafood industry as well as its rich maritime history. It goes on from there. It talks about family-friendly environment, wonderful place to travel, relaxing, all that stuff. But in seafood industry as well as rich maritime history. Boy, when you go start digging in a city like Biloxi, it's literally an archaeological dig, isn't it?
I guarantee you. You're talking about the Tellus Manor. And my dad and somebody as a kid, they uncovered some Indian artifacts, but a long time ago. It's talking about in the 30s. That 10 and 12-year-olds that. And since then, almost everything that had some archaeological significance has been done. Right now, if you dig, I think someone in the old days you didn't have a garbage pickup, and people buried things in their backyard. And right where you're talking about now, you may get a box root beer bottle that has some significance. So that's the kind of thing. I'm not really concerned about finding something that needs to, put time out on the project. So I think everything that's been over the years, everything that was buried there has been dug up already. So.
Hey, listen, twice I have forgotten that the construction is going on at Beauvoir. Since I live on the northern shore of Back Bay, I take the Popps Ferry Rd bridge, and if I'm coming from Gulfport, I'll have to turn at the mall to have to turn early, but sometimes I forget. And then, of course, coming from Biloxi, I got to turn at Veterans.
Right.
And, or else, I'm going to come there. But, hey, I had the opportunity to spend some time with Matt McDonald and his team at the Coliseum. Spent a day with him, actually. As a publisher, I'd never had a chance to go over there and see what goes on behind the scenes when they're doing a big concert. In this particular case, it was the Judds. And Matt's been on the show talking about a lot of the capital improvements that they've been doing that enable them to actually draw bigger acts there, and just the plan around the Coliseum. And the observation I had when I got done with that, after really seeing it behind the whole full behind the scenes look at what that contributes to this community, is that the Coliseum in and of itself is like this economic engine for the community. And I think sometimes we kind of take it for granted. It just kind of flows and does its thing and brings all these people in. The good news is, as it relates to Beauvoir, there hasn't been any of these $1 million acts here during that particular construction project. But we're lucky to have it, aren't we?
We certainly are. We recognize that. I was on the Coliseum Commission. I think I came off in 2001. But the long game, and my biggest priority is the extension of Beauvoir Road across to Highway 90. That's got $17 million left in that project. We're going to we go to bid very shortly by March. It's going to be ready to go. It's about a 12-month construction and engineering period. Our permitting is ongoing. But that will tie a couple of.
You said the extension of Beauvoir, but you meant Popps Ferry.
Yeah, excuse me, Popps Ferry across the railroad tracks alongside the west side of the Coliseum with a boulevard. And the acquisition for all that property, Coliseum, we paid them $1 million plus on some of the. But bottom line, it's going to make Popps Ferry Boulevard tie into Highway 90. Then we could possibly get, I think it's 615, get a state designated road, because eventually the bridge is going to need to be replaced. That is not a state bridge. This project, again, my top priority is to get that extension done. And that will help all kinds of, when you go east or come from the east or going west or whatever, go from Highway 90 across and you eventually reach the bridge. But that's the number one priority. And with those enhancements for the Coliseum will be in place also.
We'll come back to why that's important. The state road designation is important. It's extremely important, I might add. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue the conversation with Mayor FoFo Gilich. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We're visiting with my good friend, Mayor FoFo Gilich, and appreciate you being here joining us on 103.1 or on YouTube or Facebook or your favorite podcast. These are always really enlightening and important conversations. Hey, when we went to break, we were just talking about all the infrastructure improvements that are happening all across the city. And we were beginning to kind of zero in. The mayor made the point that one of his big priorities is to continue Popps Ferry from where it is now and have it go all the way through to Highway 90. And hopefully that would be sort of an important step toward getting Popps Ferry designated as a state road. This is really important, actually, because as we discussed during the discussions around replacing the Popps Ferry Rd bridge, the bridge is one of the more important bridges in terms of north-south corridors, but it belongs to the city. So the city sort of left its own financial devices to replace that bridge. And And when you think about the other bridges and other state-owned bridges, they're always going to get a priority when it comes to financing. That's an important step, isn't it?
It is. It's a category of movable bridges too, as versus just fixed bridges. There's a number of fixed bridges projects that we would be asking for help, but no, that is a critical. The designation is really critical for the city of Biloxi, and as we move forward with the elimination of the draw and some of those things, and then give it some 4-lane capability. We looked at a possibility of a toll road coming up, and it was a $200 million deal. And again, we're actually concentrating on the extension, which would tie it into Highway 90, and then gives us the opportunity to get designated a state road. I think 615 is what it would be, and then eventually. That plan A is the extension. Plan B was to rehab the bridge so the mechanism, the draw won't break down. I mean, and that's some old hydraulics and some old technology that I think both the Wilkes Bridge to the west and Fort Bayou just went for $30 or $40 million worth of renovation to the movable structure, and that's a significant thing that needs to be done just to keep it from breaking. We'll still have to be living with 2 lanes instead of 4 lanes and no high rise. But this is the critical time right now between completing the extension to from across Pass Road, across the railroad tracks to Highway 90. As I mentioned, CSX a while back, that every time you cross with a new crossing, you got to shut down three crossings. We had 21 crossings. We've designated 3. 2 of them already been closed, and the third one will be Hollis Street. So we'll be ready to move with that cross there right away, and then cross over to the area that Nat has an impact, situation with underpasses to both the parking lots, and then to Highway 90 with the new signalization and turning and that sort of thing. It is significant that it's designated a state highway, which it is. And I think Brad, with the Mississippi Department of Transportation is a perfect partner to move it forward and see the possibilities and go from there.
Well, I think what's happening, I mean, essentially what the mayor is saying is this effort to try to figure out the best way to finance the bridge, the replacement of the bridge in a high-rise scenario. $170, $200 million is the proposed possibilities. They sort of backed away from that because it was clear the public wasn't going to support a toll road, and it's just a reality. But I think the mayor did a good job of putting it out there and saying that under the circumstances, this being a city-owned bridge, these are the options that are available to us. So since that didn't fly, the goal now is to make some capital improvements to the bridge, mostly around the actual draw itself, so that we can have a more reliable structure. Because as you know, I'm on that every day. I'm sure you're on it a lot yourself. It's really, really aggravating when it doesn't close all the way or open all the way. And it's a critical. I mean, you think about the seaway. The vision of creating the seaway, the industrial canal, our forefathers in Harrison County were smart as hell, but now it means that all that important barge traffic going to not only Plant Jack Watson, but going to the industrial seaway, it's got to go through the Popps Ferry. So
it is a regional situation. It's a regional problem. Literally, when weather changes and that metal contracts and expands, we've had people with crowbars trying to align it so it will lock in order to move. So I mean, it's just part of. They were using the technology instead of the swing bridge. They used the opening, but there was a technology at the time in the 70s, and there's a whole. In talking with some of the engineers, there's a whole movable bridge engineering group. I mean, and anything that's movable on a bridge, it has its own little. A niche as far as engineering. So we're learning more about those things. But no, it is critical. And I think, as we move forward and complete this extension, the designation will be next, and then the long play over, again, the 10-year vision is so important. So we need to have things in motion where, it takes long, it takes, millions of dollars to actually get it rolling. So.
Yeah. Well, FoFo, we're out of time, but listen, it's been great to catch up with you. I wish you a happy new year. I know the legislative session's about to start. There's always a flurry of activity around that, I know. Good luck with that, and we'll catch up with you next month or two and see how things are going.
Thank you, Ricky. Happy New Year to everyone. And it's great to be here, and I think we're very fortunate to live in a city, a great place as compared to a lot of other problematic places. We're very blessed, and so
we live in paradise. Most people get that. That's for sure. Listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye bye.